Alrighty, episode 17. Here we are.
17.
We made it.
We did make it. I mean, after such a long delay after episode 16, it's any wonder we got back on the bandwagon. That's a joke. We recorded 16 yesterday.
Indeed.
We're just, putting these out little by little. How you doing since yesterday?
Yeah.
What's new?
I'm now getting sponsored by Yeti since yesterday. And here's my Yeti cup. It's actually over there. But
Very
I'm
nice.
going to go stand up and get it.
No Getty the Yeti.
Yeah.
Very good, very good.
What have you been up to?
So does that mean no
yesterday?
bevy? Today was a public holiday for Echo Show Day. I did not go to the Echoes. For people who don't live in Brisbane and have any idea what the Echo is, it's like if you've watched Parks and Recreation, the Harvest Festival that they have, it's kind of like that, but way more shit. And people get a public holiday to go, which, if there's any indication that something is not a good event, if you have to literally give people a day off in order to attract them to go, that's a good sign that it's crap. So I didn't do that. I hung out at home, took the dog for a walk, went out for some lunch, just had a nice chill day instead. So it was lovely. What about you?
You didn't get the show bag? No show bag?
I didn't get the show bag. Mate, I've never been to the Echo. I've lived in the city for probably 15 years and I've never been. It's on every year. And seeing as I'm moving, I probably never will. So, hooray.
Oh, well. So what are you drinking? Seeing as you're the only one with a beverage.
Yeah, I got a Suntory double lemon. It's like soju and vodka and soda. It's pretty good, low calories, and quite tasty. It tastes like Sprite, but it's 6%. So, I like them.
Daddy Sprite.
Yeah, exactly.
Soju's a liquor, right? Like it's like a rice wine, right?
Could be. I don't know. I don't know. Let's ask our producer, Elliot's mobile. Sorry.
Johnny Bob, right?
Yeah, whatever we called him that one time. It is a distilled beverage. It's typically distilled from rice, barley, sweet potatoes, buckwheat, or brown sugar. So pretty much the same as every other distilled liquor. Yeah, I don't know. Seems just like vodka. Maybe it's more like gin, like it's just alcohol based with some certain combo of botanicals in it that makes it soju rather than gin. Beats me, man. Tastes good. Tastes like Sprite.
I'll take it.
Anyway,
yeah.
One day we'll do just a whole episode on just beverages, but that is not today. Today we have a topic to dive into, and that is
we have a good topic today.
All things One Medical acquisition. So Amazon recently purchased One Medical, which was a virtual and somewhat in-person healthcare provider startup in the US for several billion US dollars. And it's an interesting play from Amazon's point of view, and we thought we would talk about it and just give you all of our hot takes, because we have many hot takes.
We do. It's not very AI focused this week, but it's our podcast, so what are you going to do about it? But Elliot and I work in the AI and healthcare space, and we find this a fascinating move by Amazon, so we want to talk about it. And when you run your own podcast, you get to talk about stuff like this if you want to talk about it. So that's what we're going to do today. But I'll give us a little bit of an intro into the deal while I ask Elliot to turn down the quality of my video because I think I'm lagging a little bit. So you figure that out, Elliot, and I'll intro the deal.
I'll do my best.
So what I what I reckon we're going to talk about today is first off, we're going to start with like a little overview of the purchase, overview of One Medical and Amazon, and like Amazon's previous plays into the healthcare space. Second thing I think we should do is then talk about the questions everyone is asking about this deal, because there's a lot of people asking like, oh, what's Amazon going to do with my data and stuff like that. And then we'll jump into the hot take part of it, which is Elliot and Mai's answers to these questions. And then finally, I have just called this conspiracy section theory, where Elliot and I talk about things that we think could be different and cool to talk about. So once again, we'll start off with an overview, then we'll jump into the questions everyone's asking around the deal. We'll jump into our hot takes, and then we'll jump into our conspiracy theories about it. So that's the plan for today.
Sounds good to me. And we will sprinkle in a little bit of where AI might come into play here, because if you're doing tech and you're doing healthcare, there is bound to be AI somewhere, and this is probably no exception. And Amazon is known for doing AI stuff, so we'll at least ground the conversation where appropriate.
Exactly. So starting off with a little bit of an overview. So the overview of the deal is Amazon has purchased One Medical outright for $3.9 billion US dollars cash. Cash. It is the third largest acquisition Amazon has ever made, behind Whole Foods and MGM.
How much
Amazon
did they pay for
has
both of those,
had a little play in the healthcare space before. Sorry, mate, what was that?
How much did they pay for MGM and Whole Foods, just to give it a comparison? Do you know?
I think it was 13 for Whole, 7 for MGM.
Okay.
But Johnny Bob's going to check that while I keep jumping into this.
Yeah.
So
okay.
About One Medical. So One Medical is what is One Medical? One Medical, we all know what Amazon is, so let's jump into One Medical. One Medical is a primary care subscription service that focuses on delivering high quality health care without any of the waiting or experience pains that are currently being suffered in the primary care world. So at the moment, the average wait time for your first appointment for a GP is 19 days. So there's a lot of pain in this area for people who just want to go and see a doctor, whether it's for prescription renewal or whether it's something to get a day off, to get a medical certificate for work. People are waiting a long time for primary care in not just the US, but also in the US, but also in other areas as well, like the United Kingdom. So One Medical started, and their model is you pay $200 per year, and you will get 5 virtual health consults and 1 in-person consult with that $200. But you can then also book as many other appointments you want, and they guarantee same-day bookings. And that's at that point, you're either paying out of pocket for yourself to go and see the doctor, or your insurance company is picking up the bill and you're paying a co-payment or something like that. But their point is fast, high-quality healthcare when you need it in the primary care space. As of writing, they have about 800,000 members, of which about a bit more than half are from enterprise clients. So they serve a lot of enterprise customers. I've read somewhere that there's about 8,000 enterprise customers that they supply, so quite a few. There's about 50 per enterprise client. And they are in 29 states physically in the US, and they have 182 medical offices, so physical locations that you can go and visit. And that's a combination of direct actual One Medical offices and also One Medical affiliated practices. In terms of financial stuff, they clocked over about $600 million in FY21. They're probably heading more towards the $800 million in it for the next financial year. 80% of it comes from their commercial stuff, which is people like normal people going to the doctor, and 20% comes from Medicare. And those are for what they designate as high risk patients. And we'll jump into what that means in a second. Only about 14% of their money actually comes from their membership fee, which is $199 for the year. So to join them and to get the 5 teleconsults and the 1 in person, you need to pay $199 per year. They only get about 14% of their revenue from this, so it's not a big part of their revenue. Their biggest revenue within this generator is partnerships, which accounts for about 40% of total revenue. The next bit is their net fee for service. So, for example, if you go and see the doctor and you need a skin check, they will charge your insurer money for that, and they will get paid a fee for it. So that's their big two earners are the partnerships, the client, the client enterprise clients, and the net fee for services. And it's a pretty low margin business. They earn about 17% from all of this, and they call it their care margin, and it's about 17%, which means to take that to deliver that care, they earn 100 for every dollar that they earn delivering care. They need to pay, can I do the maths, 83 cents just to deliver that care alone. So it's quite a low margin business. So they only get 17 cents on every dollar to pay for the rest of the business. So that's all the administration, the marketing, the rent, etc. So it's a pretty low margin business. So yeah, I'll just pause there because I've been saying lots of numbers. But any thoughts on that, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, I think that margin was the bit that cleared up the one thought that I had, which was that, for a tech business, 800 million revenue to a $3 billion acquisition, like that's not a huge multiple, but I guess if you look at gross revenue multiples in sort of recurring revenue, which is what I guess a lot of the SaaS businesses are valued on, and I don't know if this was valued as a SaaS business, but that's more up that alley. It's an interesting one, that sort of split of subscriptions and things. Does that mean that if there are corporates included in that subscription, or is this just individual people paying subscriptions?
I think that's just individual. It said membership income because the corporate revenue pays for that membership. So I don't think they're double counting or anything like that. So yeah, and interestingly, like Google alone accounted for about 10% of their total revenue. Google's their biggest client. So these partnerships seem to be a valuable part of their business. The other thing I'll say on the actual acquisition size as well is that they're currently sitting there with $1 billion in relatively liquid assets, both cash and non-cash items. So really, although they spent $3.9 billion on the deal, it's actually more of a $2.9 billion deal because they bought $1 billion worth of liquid assets. So that revenue multiple is even less. But I think you're correct in saying is that you can't use that $800 million as a pure SaaS business because it's got such a high cost of goods sold, which is just not what SaaS is about. SaaS has very low costs of goods sold and very high, much higher capital costs.
Yeah, for sure.
So, bit more on One Medical around how they were planning on growing and what I could get from their shareholder stuff. So, what they really wanted to do was expand their corporates and grow within corporates. So these partnerships, and the reason is that especially around getting people who work at a company and their dependents to join the corporate program. So, for example, if you work at Google and you had a partner and some kids, they would want you to bring that partner and those kids along into the program as well. Their other growth strategy was getting more at-risk patients. So these at-risk patients accounted for about 20% of their revenue. And what these are people that are generally older and generally have a comorbidity such as or like a risk factor such as diabetes or COPD or something like that. And what happens there is they get paid money by Medicare to manage these people, and they earn a difference on how much they spend on managing them versus how much they earn for managing them. And the point there is it's kind of value-based care, kind of fee-for-service, where if you can deliver better outcomes, you actually get a little bit more money, but mainly it seems to be fee-for-service as well. But they were pretty strong on this because they reckoned that they could manage this better than the current system. So this seemed to be a large part of how they were planning on growing. And then the other bit is that there are 29 states that they're in. Those 29 states are where they offer their direct-to-consumer membership, so people can just sign up at any time and get the five in person and the 5 tele and 1 in person. But their corporates are only in 10 of those 29 states, and their Medicare or high risk patients are only in 4 of those 29. And they really wanted to expand those to be 29 out of 29 states for those two spaces as well. Um, around this high risk stuff as well, these high risk patients, they actually acquired Iora Health in 2020, which was a seniors focused healthcare company. And here's a quote from their CEO around the purchase of Iora Health. We demonstrated that we can reduce medical claims expense ratios for our senior members to see declining medical expense ratios in all of our cohorts of at-risk patients since 2017. We continue to show our ability to reduce avoidable costs and waste, and this is important for our business. So this is this idea that if we can get at-risk patients, we can do it better than the current system and therefore earn money from them. Another big thing that I noticed as well is that their NPS and their retention is very, very high for the medical space. Well, not sure about retention, but their NPS is very, very high for the medical space. Their net promoter score is about 90, which is friggin' huge for primary care. I can't remember the exact number where there was but it was something like 3 was the net promoter score for most primary care physicians or something like that, which is basically like you telling people to avoid this place at all costs. And they had over 90% retention as well, which is pretty good. So,
definitely, yeah, wow. There you go. Interesting. So, I mean, sounds like a great business. I think we can agree on that. I remember reading about Iora Health a few years ago as well. I didn't realize they were required, but I think the question, and I'm sure this is the question on a lot of people's mind, is like, how does this fit into the Amazon ecosystem? Is this going to be Amazon Prime now includes telehealth, or what do you reckon? Like, what's the play?
Yeah, and so here are kind of the questions that I found that everyone is asking about this, and that's the first one is that exactly that. Like, what's this going to look like for Amazon? The second big question is how are they going to integrate this with their other services, PillPack, which is now called Amazon Pharmacy, and also just their general Amazon goods and stuff. Big question everyone also has is what the hell is Amazon going to do with our data, our health data? The next question is like, how are they going to grow this? And then overall, that everyone's asking is this a good decision or a bad decision? But first off, let's jump into that question again, which is how do we think they're going to integrate? And I've been speaking a long time here, Elliot, so I'm just going to make you answer that question first.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, we were talking about this earlier when I was out walking the dog, and it is an interesting one because I think on the surface level, I mean, there's the Amazon Prime Health, which I don't see this being the reason Amazon will be this business. My gut feel there's a play here that's a level deeper, and they see they've got something to gain in one of their other core offerings by having this business in their portfolio. So, alternatives there might be data, and are gathering data and using that in an AI sense, in a diagnostic sense, maybe to cut out margin and do virtual healthcare on the cheap. It might be a loss leader into some of their other products, especially pharmacy. If they can make better margin on pharmaceuticals and think they may have a shot at competing with traditional pharmaceutical models, maybe roll out their own cost plus pharmacy competitor. That could be an interesting one. But one thing we talked about earlier today was, given such a big portion of One Medical's company was on corporates, do we see One Medical, instead of being a Amazon.com offering, it becomes more of an Amazon Web Service AWS offering, which is let us do your cloud and your healthcare, which I think might fall into the tinfoil hat category, but it's certainly an interesting one.
Yeah, regardless of what we all think about how it's going to fit in and what it's going to do, blah 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 blah, I think we can all agree that this is a very interesting time for primary care and healthcare. As this, to me, this could be the first step in the absolute commercialization and commoditization of primary care. this could be the death of the family doctor. And so I think what would be good here is to like think about how they'll integrate it. Is look at what Amazon's been doing in the past with healthcare. So Amazon has something out there called Amazon Care, and basically the service is, if you're part of Amazon Care, and we'll get into like who's part of it in a second, but if you're part of Amazon Care, you have access to kind of three things. The first one is a patient navigation and patient navigation service, which is on your phone. You can engage with some AI type system to help navigate where you should seek care, how you should seek care, etc. So a good example of that is, I have a headache, and it would then ask you prompt questions around where best to triage you, and also answer those questions for you if you can. If you know the healthcare space, this is kind of like the Babylon health like chatbot, healthcare chatbot. The second thing that people have access to with Amazon Care is then telehealth, and this is either with a nurse or a doctor. So once you've been triaged via this patient navigation session, you might be triaged into a telehealth service. So you'll have a phone call with a doctor, and they'll talk about it. You've got your phone. You can start doing image. You can do like some light level investigation with over the phone. The third level that they have then is in-person visits from nurses, which I think is important to say that it's nurses and not doctors. And those are for simple exams. So that's what Amazon Care has at the moment. And if we think about the One Health world, they kind of have a similar thing, which is they have telehealth triaging service and in-person capabilities, but their in-person capabilities is actual appointments in actual clinics, which is a layer on top of what Amazon already has. So I think if we combine these, what's going to happen likely is that there's going to be this hybrid world of very, very good patient navigation that's been developed by Amazon over the past couple of years. So imagine triaging yourself with a chatbot. Very, very good access to telehealth services, which is a combination of the two. And then the third, which is another hybrid of the two, which is going to be access to in-person exams. And that could either be through Amazon's home service via their nurses or One Health Clinic. And I think the value of the One Health clinics, what Amazon has done here is they've bought a footprint in the major cities that they can now use for in-person clinics. So people, and the reason why that's valuable is that it is much better for the utilization of the doctors. They're spending much more time seeing patients, which are billable, rather than simply traveling from door to door, which was what they had on offer originally. So I think we're going to see a world of very, very good patient triage via chatbots, a pretty seamless transition into telehealth, followed by a relatively seamless transition into in-person, either at the home or at one of these new clinics that One Health has. So that's kind of how I think it's going to look. As to whether it's a prime benefit or not, it's hard to say at this point. It really is. I imagine that certain members or certain areas will have access to this patient navigation and this telehealth service for relatively cheap. And I suspect money will start having to change hands at the point of in-person. So you could imagine that if you're a Prime member, you do have access to, if you are a Prime member, you could have access to their telehealth services and the patient navigation for free as part of your Prime membership. But then when you start to do in-person, that's when the money starts to, that's when you got to start paying for extra services.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
So yeah,
it would be insane for them
that's my big diatribe on that.
Yeah, it'd be crazy for them to run this as a total Prime membership. And also, I think the thing to remember, or at least I believe this to be true, is that if you look at a household in, say, the US or here in Australia or anything else, like it's not typical that every person in that household has a Prime membership. It'll be one person, maybe two, but usually one person who runs the Amazon account that has Prime, and then people just buy on that account. I really don't understand why household of people would have a Prime account. The same way that with Netflix, you know, a similar example, like it's per household rather than per individual. And given how cheap Amazon Prime is, like $9 a month or whatever, you just can't deliver healthcare at $9 a month for a household, especially if they try and maintain any semblance of their high risk patient thing, unless you're running this as a loss leader for some other service. But it's a big shift in business model.
Exactly. And I think that's the important thing here. And that's the important thing here is with Amazon is to ask, like, where's the loss leader? Like, where's the loss leader? And for me, it's going to be on this telehealth and this patient navigation. They're going to give that away for free. It's basically zero marginal cost. That's going to be what they lose money on. And they're going to make their money back up in either these in-person stuff or, which is kind of the second question, is all their other services combined. So, and the big one that everyone's talking about is Amazon Pharmacy, which was PillPack that they purchased back in 2017. So they're going to absolutely focus on improving that experience of you see doctor, you require drugs, we give you drugs.
Yeah. Which is a very interesting. Like you can see how they would make margin there, and also like logically, same day telehealth and prescription is at your door is a nice user experience. Much nicer than sit in one waiting room and then sit in another one at the pharmacy for your pills to be compounded. So I mean, maybe, but it really does feel like this core thing must be. Are we in Lag City?
Yeah, we're in Lag City. Okay, we're back. Sorry, what'd you say? And then I'll respond to that.
What was that? I mean, I caught that.
What did you say prior to this? And then we can cut back in. Something about corporate.
Oh, yeah. I just think that the loss leader approach makes sense. It seems odd. And given how much of One Medical's revenue came from corporate environments, you think there's got to be some sort of B2B here.
Do you think you could kill my upload and I can just upload this at the end?
I don't know if that's a thing.
Okay. Well, let's just 3, 2, 1. Yeah, absolutely. Like the corporate play is just the way for you to achieve scale very quickly. And it's something we haven't really talked about yet is fundamentally this is a low margin business. And if you're running a low margin business, you then want to be running high volume, and which is scale. The way Amazon can achieve scale through their already impressive network of Prime members, etc. But that's a very disparate group of people. You can achieve concentrated scale with corporates. For example, Microsoft, they probably employ 50,000 people in Seattle. Boeing, probably another 50,000 people in Seattle. If you have those people, if you have those corporates and those people, you can suddenly achieve scale in a very concentrated way, which is important for a logistics-based business, which this will be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the other thing that we discussed on the phone was, AWS came out of Amazon because Amazon was was a huge website. It knew how to scale websites, and then it suddenly says, actually, other people might find this service useful. The stuff that's been going on with Whole Foods, this sort of walk checkout now part of Amazon Fresh and everything else, is a proof of concept that they're now going to license out to other clients. On the spectrum of plausible to tinfoil hat nonsense, there is a little thing in the back of my head that says maybe Amazon buys One Medical, doesn't really care about it that much other than to prove to larger existing healthcare providers that they can offer full end-to-end telehealth plus web services plus probably pay for the one low monthly fee of whatever. And that, I think, if you are saying let's compete with Epic and Cerner and get vendor lock-in at a whole new level, I mean, that is big money.
So let's I think an interesting place to turn to here is to look at what Amazon has done in healthcare as well in the past, other than what we've already talked about. And one is something called Haven Health, which they set up with JP Morgan and Berkshire Hathaway. And they set them up in 2017. And the purpose of it was to reduce the healthcare spend for those three companies on their employees. Berkshire Hathaway, JP Morgan, and Amazon employ literally millions of people between them. And they provide healthcare to literally millions of people. And it was a big, big expense for them. And they set up this company to help reduce that and also improve the experience for their employees. They had employees that were waiting too long to get to the doctor. They had employees that weren't going to the doctor because they weren't enjoying the experience. They set up this company to fight that. It ultimately failed. And one of the funny reasons that it ultimately failed is that it was cited is that it failed because it ended up competing with Amazon itself. What I think they're trying to do is a couple of things. One is that they've realized that this is a huge expense for themselves and thus a lot of other businesses out there. And if they can improve this, not only do they have, if they can improve this, not only are they going to help their own situation, which is huge and costly for them because they employ so many people, but they're going to create an incredibly valuable business line. They are going to essentially consolidate primary care for corporates in the US, which has to be a business that is verging
100%.
on the trillions of dollars.
Yeah. I mean, and it is such a funny product of the US healthcare system in that, like, people's healthcare benefits are so closely tied to their employment status. If you look at where I am at the minute in Australia, by contrast, like the idea of this happening in Australia is just kind of crazy because your fallback is government subsidized healthcare, which means your fallback is pretty good at the end of the day. It also, from a gathering data, you just to circle back on AI for a minute, like managed services around triaging patients and recommending patients to certain products and things like that. Like, there is a lot of AI potential there, especially, I mean, think about the pharmaceutical, right? If there is a generic and a brand name of the same pharmaceutical, and maybe the generic is somehow netting Amazon better margins, being able to like match patients with prescriptions or, certain generics versus the brand name and getting the margin on the other side, like that's huge business and huge AI potential as well. Like, trying to link that stuff together. I think it'd be hard. It's such a hard space. Like, my biggest thing about all of this is that, like, Amazon's a big business. It's a great business. It's got some questionable warehouse practices with its employees, but we'll gloss over that for the time being. But they know how to run a low margin business. But healthcare is like, it's just a whole other ballgame. And I don't know. It makes me, yeah.
Yeah. And we were chatting about this beforehand. And I think, like, this is probably a good point to switch to one of the questions, which is, do we think this is a good decision or not? And the conclusion that I came to was, if you think about choosing where to play to begin with, I'm not sure this is the best way to spend $4 billion for Amazon. However, now that they have done it, I think if anyone's going to be able to do it, it's going to be Amazon. And you need the scale of Amazon, and you need the ability to tackle an experience problem like Amazon. I don't think this is going to net better healthcare for individuals, except maybe they might see a doctor faster or more often. But I don't think that they're going to be going down a let's cure chronic disease pathway with this. I think they're going to be going down a purely let's make this a better experience for people. A little bit sidetracked, but overall, I don't think that this was $4 billion is a drop in the ocean for Amazon, so that they've probably generated that in free cash since we've been speaking. But I don't think primary care is a super valuable place to dig into, so I probably wouldn't have spent $4 billion there. But if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Amazon, because it's a low margin business and they can loss lead on a bunch of things and make money in other areas.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. I think the Amazon's biggest threat in this space is not Google or Microsoft doing this. It'll be a large healthcare provider saying, "Nah, we'll show you how to do this." We're going to be probably less up on the tech side of things, but we know healthcare and we have a healthcare reputation. Because I think people will kind of be reluctant to see the Amazon branded doctor a little bit. I know that they're real doctors, medically trained, all of that great stuff. I'm sure they're brilliant doctors, but it's a weird brand association. You know, as you said to me on the phone, would you go to the Walmart doctor? Like, they're probably just as good a doctor, but like this is the highest stakes thing. You know, you want the best, and
Yeah,
Amazon is known for being cheap. They're known for being quick. They're known for a pretty smooth checkout experience. But is Amazon known for being the best? I don't know.
yeah. So let's round off with let's jump into two other questions of what the hell is Amazon going to do with all of this healthcare data, like individuals? Are they going to start? They now know that you've gone and done a fertility test. Are they going to start selling you fertility vitamins on the next time you log in? Like, what's Amazon going to do with this data?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a spicy question. I think as a consumer, if you're a consumer in the US and you may be one medical customer in the past and you're thinking, shit, I don't want this, rest assured that like
Well, by
things
the
like
way,
HIPAA
hundreds of people went
and
to Twitter to hundreds of people went to Twitter to like say I'm leaving One Medical as soon as this was announced.
yeah, yeah, and you know, I would say that like HIPAA and stuff means that there are pretty good restrictions on what people can do with your data. So, but I get it. I get it. I don't know if I'd be comfortable with it, and I know how all this works behind the scenes. You know, I've been in this space. I don't know if I'd be keen on it, but over time, I'm sure there's going to be a user base, and having that data. Yeah, I heard an interesting take on the All In podcast the other day. I don't know if you heard this one, which was with Amazon buying One Medical and having access to Whole Foods. Are we going to start to see for more chill medical conditions, not cancer and things, food and diet as a genuine prescription for managing conditions? Like, could you be prescribed to eat so many vegetables per week or whatever else and literally have that fulfilled? Uh, you know, uh, what's that box that comes to your house with like ready-made meals in it? Um,
Yeah, HelloFresh,
you know the one I mean.
Gusto
I don't
Chef,
know.
something.
There's like a billion of them. Yeah, like you go to the doctor, you got like low key iron deficiency, and maybe you don't have enough B12, so it's like, and you're overweight, as a lot of people are. Uh, Here's meal plans that'll help you alongside some other things get you back into peak physical form. That was a cool take. I mean, I can't really see that happening, but it'd be an interesting AI application to try and pair some of that stuff together. Um, because
Yeah,
I'm sure what we eat has such a huge effect on a lot of these low key medical situations.
I suspect what they're going to like. My overall feeling for this is that there's both regulatory, legal, and preventions that's going to stop them suddenly offering you vitamins or like start selling you dick pills if you think if you went to the doctor for erectile dysfunction. But I think there is, and then as well, I think Amazon is not stupid enough to do something like this. I think they know that the like upside in an extra $10 revenue per customer per year is not worth it from a like, oh my God, I am leaving Amazon entirely and a boycott of Amazon kind of Facebook style. Like Amazon does not want a run on their user base like Facebook has suffered. What I do think that will happen is that there will be very much there will be some very clear ones of, we have prescribed you this prescription drug. Click here to have it fulfilled right now via our very convenient Amazon service. And they won't be using that data for anything else. Like they won't be then using it. However, I think there will be soft opt-ins for you of, hey, we have prescribed some exercise for you, or we have prescribed some healthy food for you. Would you like to browse Amazon to see what is available for you and bang straight into their store to be fulfilled easily? I think they'll keep those systems separate. Like it'll be a soft opt-in, and they're not gonna be like then like taking that information and feeding it more and more to you. But there will be soft opt-ins around. I think like we're pretty safe from Amazon doing anything stupid, just from the like publicity fallout from it. That being said, it'll be interesting how they segregate all of this information, especially if it's linked on an Amazon Prime account, and what parts are considered HIPAA.
Yeah,
and
100%.
what's not.
And I mean, I think, yeah, and there's some interesting. Amazon here ultimately needs to play. If they are going to go down the consumer route, they need to improve these margins if they want to win. And there's some interesting like AI applications of margin reduction that I can think of, which is like demand forecasting based on Amazon sales about, say, like seasonal flu upticks and things like that, which could then say, okay, we're going to up down the number of doctors that we have on call based on these sort of signals and these sort of trends, which makes a lot of sense. Probably isn't a HIPAA violation because you can do it in such a way that's, large in aggregation, of these patients. So there's a lot of stuff there, which would be a pretty interesting thing to work on, as we talked about in last week's, or well, technically yesterday's episode. It'll probably be, are people buying more cold and flu medication, therefore more cold and flu, as opposed to any nuanced like, I ordered a new USB-C cable, therefore the flu is here. But I think there's some interesting stuff that might be possible there.
Yeah. Shall we jump onto the conspiracy theories topic to round us out?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So we've kind of got two conspiracy theories as to why like Amazon has purchased this. The first one is purely to save money on their own employees. So the kind of stats is Amazon employs 15 million people in warehouses across the globe, not just the US, but across the globe. And they have a lot of lost time injuries. So they are above the industry median. So that means people are out of work because of injuries quite a fair bit, or people are slowed or on reduced duties. When you employ 15 million people and you have one injury per 100 hours of work, you get a lot of injuries in the day. That results in two things. One, lots of doctors and medical expenses. Sorry, three things. Doctors, medical expenses. Two, legal expenses from people suing you from getting hurt at work. And then three is the cost of paying employees when they're out injured because of your work. I reckon this is a huge, huge, huge cost for Amazon every single year. And anything that they can do to reduce those injuries or get people back to work faster or reduce the severity of them is very, very valuable to them. And that's before you even start considering on what happens if we improve the healthcare that we delivered to the like 20 million people that we employ across the globe. What would that do to our bottom line? So the kind of like conspiracy theory here is that this is purely a cost play for Amazon and not a revenue play. Like they don't actually care about giving it to other people. They just want their employees to use it. That's one hot take.
So, I mean, yeah. I mean, if I stack my hot take on that hot take and put on my like Bernie Sanders hat for a minute, if you think about how many of those employees are warehouse employees and how much effort Amazon has gone to like bust unions in recent years, or I mean, discourage union activity or whatever else. If you're self-insured and your healthcare is provided internally, that I think is another strong lever to say, stick with us. The company loves you. Definitely don't unionize. And if you do, you've still got to see our doctors. But who knows? Maybe you see the 4.5-star doctor instead of the 5-star doctor. Who knows? Who knows? Definitely don't unionize. So that is absolute tinfoil nonsense. But it's interesting to think about union busting when all of your services, including healthcare, are now internal company services as opposed to external.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as well, like if you're self-insured, it's a way to save money. But if it's like self-insured and self-provided as well, it's like an even bigger lever to saving money. Because at the moment, when you're self-insured, when anyone goes and sees the doctor, you have to pay call it $50 co-payment. When you've got, let's call it 1 million employees in the US, and they each go to the doctor twice a year, that's the small end of the co-payment. Like that's a lot of money. If you can reduce that $50 to $25 because you run it all in-house yourself, or you triage people better with telehealth services, like that's a big number attached to it. And I actually don't think this is bigger conspiracy as we think, and that like this is actually a justification as to why they're going to go after the B2B play rather than the B2C play, which is it is a major cost saving for large businesses. And if they can get this into other places as well, they're going to not only be earning revenue, but they're going to be getting a better cost. They're going to be getting a better scale to reduce their to run their entire cost of running this entire operation across. So their fixed costs of serving Amazon that, but if they can serve Microsoft and Google and Facebook at the same time, their fixed cost per employee served is very, very low.
It'll be very interesting to see if Google remains a customer after, the tail end of the acquisition. Does Google think that Amazon is going to do the right thing with the data and with their employees?
Oh, maybe that's a third conspiracy, which is this is actually Amazon's way of taking out Google, which is just making all their employees sick.
Or just putting up their competitors' costs,
Yeah. So that's conspiracy theory number one. Conspiracy theory number two is actually a conspiracy theory from the Whole Foods acquisition back in 2015 or whenever it was, 2016, 2017. Let's call it 2017. And the theory there was that Amazon bought Whole Foods as they bought them to be their first retail customer for AWS so they could get the use case for them and to demonstrate that AWS would deliver a significant value to retail customers. And you've kind of already touched on this as well as, and this could be the equivalent of that, where they're purchasing their first medical provider as the use case to show that AWS could be the web services, the data services provider for major healthcare providers, as a real finger to Oracle / Cerner / the same thing now. And this could be their move to solidify their work in the healthcare space and be the web services provider.
Yeah, 100%. I think more broadly, even just like the technology and tech services provider, because if you can give somebody out of the box telehealth options, out of the box sort of patient triaging, patient navigation, compliant storage, IT, all of that sort of stuff, those are huge contracts. And I don't think it's actually that crazy to think that this is a way to get a foot in the door in the medical industry, really to sell to other medical providers, not even as a consumer play.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll
any other conspiracy
we'll
theories that we
check
haven't
back
thought of?
in episode 100. None that come to mind. I suppose we'll definitely check back in 117 and let everybody know how this panned out.
Yeah, well, that's if if this does turn out like any of the other major acquisitions that Amazon has made, is that this will be a slow burn. Like One Medical isn't going to be on every street corner and in every Starbucks and in every Amazon Fresh store in the next month. Like the way they did Whole Foods is they bought Whole Foods, kind of started changing a lot of stuff in the background without the consumer knowing, and then only offered a few changes to the consumer around Amazon Prime. And then only now just starting to really ramp up the changes to Whole Foods with their just walk out technology, which is you can pick anything off the shelf, put it back, whatever it is, and walk out, and it'll charge you the bill correctly, and it's integrated into your Amazon account and everything like that. Um, they're only just now starting to roll that out to Whole Foods after like 5 years of testing and 5 years of investigation. So I don't think that this is going to be an overnight change. And yeah, we should check in and maybe even episode 217, let alone 117.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's one thing I think we should circle back on, which was probably, let's call it episode 12, 13, when we talked about Google's healthcare investments and how I'm pretty sure I'm on the record saying it looks like Google's going to win this from the amount that they're spending, and Amazon isn't really doing much. Well, I'm eating my words as we speak, but anything to comment there on Google's recent plays into it or moves into this space? Or
Yeah, I mean, look, the contrast that I see here, which is an interesting one, is I feel like Google has taken more of a like start from the science approach with a lot of their healthcare stuff. In that, they do a lot of stuff in their AI department with DeepMind and Deep Health and whatever those are now, Verily, all of that sort of like more grassrootsy sort of fundamental technology plays. They do have healthcare APIs within Google Cloud to do sort of data processing, data storage, and all that compliance sort of stuff. Um, which is interesting. They released that skin photography product, or released a while ago, but they seem to do a lot more stuff from that side of things, whereas sort of Amazon now and even Oracle with Cerner, it seems to be sort of acquiring incumbents and taking, I guess, different paths through to the market. I don't know who's ultimately going to win there. I think Google's going more from a portfolio approach of do a whole lot of different things, and maybe some of them will stick, but no matter what's happening, you're saying the word Google a lot. Whereas Oracle and Amazon seem to be taking a more, big bets approach.
yeah, I think the other contrast here is that like Amazon is doing a logistics business, which is like what Amazon is good at, where this is going to require a lot of like online offline coordination, whereas Google has taken a like more of a, I don't want to say fundamental technology, but like there's like a layer of infrastructure and technology of which things that will directly touch the patient will be built on top of. Whereas Amazon's just gone, nah, we're going straight to the patient and we're also building it backwards. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah,
It'll be
that
interesting.
is a good contrast. Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, we're coming up on an hour. Interesting conversation, but anything else, or will we wrap it for today?
I suppose the only other question there is like, if you were sitting in Amazon, that I have for you, Elliot, rather than for me, is if you were sitting in Amazon now and you were about to acquire 800,000 people's pieces of data, medical data, you're probably going to be ratcheting it up, and you're probably going to be able to like correlate it with other medical information, all within a lovely HIPAA compliant way. Like, what would you be excited to interrogate from an AI point of view?
Yeah, that's a cool question. Putting my serving Amazon's business interest hat on as well, I think I'd be looking for a way to get better margins. 87 or whatever it was cents per into dollar earned being spent on cost of goods sold seems like the right thing to be tackling, because
Yeah.
that's a lot of money floating around. So I'd be looking at that. How do you put more into the care navigation stream, deliver more through cheaper services, deliver more through AI, rather than clinicians, in-person appointments, stuff that's really expensive.
Yeah, exactly. If I think about that as like a triangle, right? You've got patient navigation, which is fully automated down the bottom. You have telehealth, which is semi-automated, and then you have in-person up the top. I'd be looking to flow everything down a layer as much as possible, so the triangles instead of like gets really wide and flat rather than very pointy.
Mm-hmm.
For those who are listening to the audio only, you missed my sick dance moves of.
It's good. This is why.
All right, we'll call it that.
Very good. Well, thank you, friends, once again for watching. Do all the YouTube stuff, subscribe, leave a comment, place your bets about where you think Amazon is going to go with this and who is going to win the healthcare wars in the tech world. And we look forward to seeing you again for another episode very, very soon. Ta-ta.
Bye, everyone.